Do you want to be made well? It's a question that hangs there in the air, and we wrestle with it. It's a question that plumbs our depths, and it makes us ask deeply, what is it that we truly desire and want? Do you want to be made well? Some of you this morning may need to hear that question. You may need to ponder and meditate upon that question as this week unfolds. And if that is you, I encourage you to do so. It is, of course, of great spiritual worth to ask ourselves, what is it I truly seek? And, like many of you in the pews, you have heard this gospel reading and you've heard preachers talk about this in this way, asking you, do you want to be made well? Those sermons often have some hint of either, Jesus as the great therapist who wants to figure out what is it that we continue to cling to and hold on to that must be worked through and processed before such healing can unfold. Others hear the question, and there's this notion that the man in his response, because he doesn't really answer Jesus' question, is somehow putting up a bunch of obstacles and excuses that he's belly aching. And if he would just quit his belly aching, pick up his mat by his bootstrings, and walk, he might just be healed. But I wonder, listening to the man's question, if it's not I got ahead of myself. Oops. Let's back up the tape just a second. I notice that with that kind of sermon, that kind of approach to this text, there's a core problem. And the core problem is that the man never comes to this great, deep aha moment. Right? He never actually says yes to Jesus' question. There is no moment where he realizes, you're right, Jesus, I've been clinging to this identity as being a poor beggar for far too long. And that's rooted in whatever, and I'm finally ready. Nor does Jesus reprimand the man for giving the reasons why he doesn't get healed. Jesus doesn't say, if you would just quit your complaining, you'd get healed already. Right? So what if this man's question, his statements, aren't so much belly aching or excuses or acts of self-denial, but are rather statements that could be made by anyone there in that crowd? The gospel reading says that there are many invalids, not just this one man, but there are people filling all 5 porticos, people who are paralyzed and blind and lame, people who are laying there wanting healing, but they've been sitting there and waiting, this man, for 38 years. A long time. And his story, that no one, this stranger comes up and asks, do you want to be made well? And his response is to say, no one helps me. No one comes along and takes my hand and helps me get into the water when it's stirred, when it's most active, when its healing properties are there. And you know what? When I try to do it myself, everyone climbs in ahead of me, and they get there first. It's a story that I don't think is unique to this man, but is a story that many would share, and even stretching into our own day, people who live with disabilities, chronic illness, chronic pain, know that story all too well. I call the doctors, and I make the appointments, and there's such a long line, they can see me in 6 months. I go to specialist after specialist after specialist, and they all just nod their head, and they say, well, we'll keep doing tests, right? You know this story, of I seeking health, I want it, and it just doesn't come. Perhaps the man is not belly aching or making excuses. He's simply telling Jesus what it is like here at this pool. And now, what's greatly ironic about that account of what it's like at this pool is the fact that the pool is named Beth Zapha, which doesn't mean anything to us. But Beth Zapha, one translation of it is the pool of healing, but another translation of it is the pool of compassion, the house of compassion. Do you see the irony here? This man and all these invalids are laying around in the house of compassion, and Jesus comes along and asks, "How do you want healing? What's going on here?" And the man describes that in this house of compassion, no one stops and helps me. No one comes along and takes me into the pool, and everyone is trying to get into the pool ahead of me. It is that story that some of us know so well, where we sit in places that are supposed to be places of healing and wholeness, whether they be the hospital or the church or your family of origin or the house you live in, places where they are supposed to be places of healing and wholeness, but instead all we experience is isolation and aloneness and abandonment. We know that pain. But there is one man who helps him. There's one man who shows him compassion, this man, Jesus, who, in my imagination, gets down to the guy's level. For some reason, I guess he's sitting on a mat. He's on the ground, gets down to the guy's level, looks him in the eye, and this question, do you want to be made well? Perhaps is not the great therapy question we might think it is. Perhaps it is not the great do-it-yourself, quit-your-belly-aching question we think it is, but it is in fact a question acknowledging this person's humanity. Someone who has been sitting here for 38 years, having whatever illness he has, and remember, lifespans weren't like lifespans today, right? So 38 years is like practically this guy's whole life. And Jesus notices him, sees him, sits down and asks, "Do you want help?" And in the face of the man's despair and hopelessness and the giving upness of, "It's been too late for me, Jesus. No one helps me. No one gets me in the pool," Jesus cares for him and has the capacity to heal him. And so the actions of Jesus, I think, ask us an even more daunting and haunting question than do you want to be made well. I think Jesus' actions ask us, is our house, the house of Trinity Cathedral, is our house a house of compassion? Is the house you live in, the house you co-create with whoever you might live with, or your neighbors, even if you live alone, is the house you live in a house of compassion? Now, I want to warn you, because some of you, like me, we evaluate that question, is Trinity Cathedral a house of compassion, by checking out, going through the Rolodex of our memories. Have I received enough compassion here? What about that time when so-and-so said what ... to me? Or what about that time when I came to the priest and I had a very important question, but they didn't give me the time of day? I know you have those experiences. I'm probably the priest in that story. But remember that asking the question, have I gotten enough, whatever it is, enough understanding, enough being heard, enough compassion, is exactly the question that led everyone to get into the pool before this man in the story. I need the compassion. I need the support. I need the understanding. Let me get in the pool first. And so, in fact, my friends, the question to ask, to evaluate, to weigh whether Trinity Cathedral is a house of compassion is to ask myself, have I shown someone compassion this morning? Who have I, over coffee hour, driving into the cathedral, sitting there in the pews next to you, have I shown them compassion this day?